Hey basketball coaches and basketball players, my name is Alan from Al's Basketball Training, and today I'm going to talk to you about the 5 simple and easiest motion basketball offenses that you can run with your basketball team. Now quickly, if you like basketball plays, drills, and skills, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, and go check out my 2 defensive books in the links in the description below if you want to become a fantastic defensive team. Okay, so in this first play, what we're going to have is player 1 starting with the ball. This is a 4-out, 1-in motion offense. And what we're going to have is player 1 pass over to player 4, and player 5 is going to set a screen for player 1, and player 1 is going to cut towards the rim. At this time, if player 1 is open, hit him up for that layup. Player 5 is then going to pop to the 3-point line, and we're going to have now player 3 filling that high post position, and player 1 is going to fill player 3's spot. Now, at this point, player 5 can set a screen for player 4, and player 4 can then get the ball at the point, or if player 5 is open, player 4 can pass towards player 5. Now, we can run this same play over again with passing over to player 2, passing over to player 1, and setting that screen for player 2, and player 2 cutting towards the rim, player 3 popping, and player 4 filling. Or, once this is worked through, our next step, once player 2 has cut and player 4 is filled, we can now go into part 2 of the motion offense. So this is a multi-part basketball offense. So what we're going to have here now is player 3. He can go and set a screen for player 1. Player 1 is going to use that screen, but we're now also going to have player 4 setting a screen for player 3, and player 3 is going to be cutting towards the rim. Player 1 can pass to player 3 if he's open. If he is not, we are now going to have player 4 pop out towards the 3-point line, and player 3 is going to be now filling that high post position. Now let's see this with a quick man-to-man, because this motion will only work against man-to-man and not against a zone. So player 1 is going to pass over to player 4. Player 5 is going to set that back screen on player 1. He's going to cut towards the rim. If he's open, hit him up. If he is not, player 5 is going to pop. And now we're going to be having player 2 fill in towards that high post. And player 1 is going to then pop out. And player 4 is going to pass to player 5. And player 5 is going to pass over to player 3. At this time, we're going to have player 3 pass to player 1. And now we're going to have player 2 setting that back screen on player 3. Player 3 cuts. If he's open, hit him up with that layup. If he is not open, then player 4 is going to be filling the high post. Player 3 is going to then be popping out. And we're going to be having player 2. Now he's going to go and set a screen for player 1. Player 1 is going to use that screen. Player 2 is then going to roll towards the basket while having player 4 set a screen for him at the same time. Player 1 could pass him the ball for that layup. If not, then let's say player 2 fought through. Now player 2 is in the high post. Player 4 is out on the wing. And now we are set up in our motion offense once again. However, most likely, at first, when we first run this play, player 2 setting that back screen, that's going to get player 1 open. 90% of the time, at least when I see this ran, player 1 is open the first 1 or 2 times down the court. After that, his defender's going to be cheating, and now we're going to be having player 3. He's sometimes open when he's cutting towards that high post. If his man is not watching what he's doing and just watching, maybe sagging off, playing some help defense, and let's say player 3 red was playing some pretty strong help defense and player 3 cuts across, he could be open for a really quick shot. Now that happens once in a while, and that is something to watch out for. Player 1 is then going to pop out towards that 3-point line. And now we're going to have player 2 setting that screen for player 4. Now, once in a while, player 4 is going to be open for that shot. But with player 3 setting that screen for player 2 after he sets that screen for player 4, a lot of the times he's going to be open for that layup. Now, just like every other motion, offense, or set play, you're going to not want to run this play over and over and over again. You're going to need other plays. Let's check those out now. Now, these next plays are all going to be 5-out motion basketball plays. These can be ran against a man-to-man or a zone defense. Now, with a zone defense, when you're running a 5-out, you want some paint touches. So you really want to look for those players who are cutting towards that key so you can pass them that ball to collapse that defense and for him to kick it out for a shot. And sometimes, if you can have a player on one side of the key get the defense to collapse on him and another player cuts on the opposite side, you're going to be creating a lot of open layups as well. So, not just the set versions of these motion offenses. Don't just have that in mind, but read the defense. If your defender or a player is leaving his zone, cut to that zone and you're going to get an easy basket. Let's check out these amazing 5-out plays. So this first play, again, does work against a zone defense and a man-to-man. I'm going to show you it really quickly against a man-to-man, but I'm also going to show you it against a zone as well. So this is called the 5-out dribble handoff. So player 1 dribble handoffs to player 5. Player 5 uses that screen. Of course, he could take that shot. If there's a switch or not a switch, and player 1 is rolling towards the basket, he could be open for that layup as well. So keep that in mind. Now, if he's not open and players are playing really tight defense, we now have player 3 popping up towards that free throw line extended. Player 1 is going to be then popping out. And now let's say we're going up against a zone defense. So we're going to switch this up really quickly. So now we have, let's call it a 3-2 zone defense. So now we're running a 3-2 zone defense. Let's see how this play works. So player 5 is going to dribble over towards this side and do a dribble handoff. Player 3 uses that dribble handoff and player 5 rolls towards the basket. If he's open, you can hit him up. He could hit the floater. He could hit a layup. But when you get that ball in the middle of a 3-2 zone, you are going to be definitely collapsing one, if not both, of those low post defenders, which means that these two players are open, but it also means that if they're smart, they're cutting towards the basket, and you could have a nice, easy layup with one of those wing players if they're able to read that defense collapsing on player 5, and they start cutting along the baseline. They're going to be getting a ton of easy layups. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of terminology that a lot of Canadian basketball players, or at least older Canadian basketball players, use. It started getting phased out when I was coming into basketball, but I still know about this terminology. Generally speaking, the backboard's not going to be right along the baseline like it is in this diagram. Usually the backboard is going to be a bit of a distance away from the baseline. And now there's what's called a Russian spot, or at least what the Canadian international team calls the Russian spot. That's because the Russians used to run a lot of offenses similar to this, where they would collapse a zone or collapse a defense, and they would have some of their bigger players. Let's say we had player 2 rolling towards the basket. They had a lot of their bigger players hiding right behind the backboard along the baseline. This player who's driving or cutting towards the rim or rolling towards the rim will pass down towards player 5, and he'll then attack the rim and destroy the rim, and there's nothing you can do about it when you have a big Russian back in the 60s or 70s doing this play. So this is why they call it a Russian spot, and it worked really well for them, and it can work extremely well for you as well. So now, let's say none of those options were open. We now move back out. We start doing a dribble handoff on this side. Player 4, let's say, doesn't have player 3 open. And player 5 fills in. Player 3 can then pop out. And it's nice and simple. Against a 2-3 zone, it works very similar. There's always going to be a trap up top because that's in between their zone. So inherently player 1 is open, but you'll generally have these players, these wing players, playing a bit higher on a 5-out, and you'll have a dribble handoff with player 1, and then player 2 is going to then go and receive that ball. Player 4 is going to roll towards the basket. If you can get that ball in to player 4, it's now going to be collapsing player 3 in because he doesn't want player 3 blue to cut baseline. Player 5 is going to be popping up and player 4 is going to be popping down. Now, if one of these two wings mess up, those two players are going to be open. If player 3 messes up and stays high, player 3 blue can cut baseline. If player 3 red goes down too low, player 4 blue can kick out to player 5. That's going to make player 3 recover. Extra pass to player 3 gets an open 3-point shot. So again, reading the defense and reacting. Now, another 5-out play that I'm going to show you is one I've showed you many, many times and works extremely well at all levels. Player 1 passes to player 4, sets a screen 4. Even though this is a zone defense, you're going to have player 4 use that screen. Player 1 is going to roll. Could be a layup, could collapse. Again, same idea, kick out or drive baseline and pass down. If that's not open, player 2 fills, player 1 fills out. Those players go back to normal. That's play 4. Play number 5, or shall I say play number 4 and 5 because I just messed that up. But again, very similar plays. You're going to pass and cut, which is very simple. If player 4 is open when cutting, pass him the ball. If he gets that ball, he can collapse the defense and kick it out. When he fills out, these players are going to fill in. And now, most likely the defense would be shifted like that. And what we're going to be having now is the pass and screen away. So player 2 receives that ball. Player 5 is going to then screen away. Now, you're probably saying, well, that's not doing anything because player 3 is just going to go back into player 3's spot. Well, what I like to do is when you're screening away towards these low wings, instead of them popping up towards those corners, I want player 3 to pop towards the free throw line. That way he can be open and he can also collapse the defense when player 5 is popping out towards his player 3's old area. Now, player 3 could kick out. If player 3 is not open, let's say player 5 came up, this could be a skip pass over to player 5 blue. Or what you can do now is have player 2 dribble over towards this side, where now we are shifting the defense like this, and now we can open up player 3 in that high post or that free throw line, and you can collapse that defense and he can kick it out towards player 1 or 4 for a 3-point shot. So there's a couple of different options there as well. I hope that these plays help your team win more games. If they do, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you guys again later on today for the second video of the day.